My name is Chiva, and as you can see, this chat is going to be in English. I work as a lean and agile coach, and I'm also a professional coach by ICF. But we are not here to talk about me, we're here to talk about cognitive bias. I came across the concept of cognitive bias 3 years ago when I was doing a training course in social psychology, and I was impressed by the incidents and the impact that these unconscious processes can have in our lives, and especially in our profession. Also, these unconscious processes can be a significant issue in organizations. Cognitive bias are unconscious processes that influence how we see and how we perceive the world. They are mostly helpful. So they are a result of evolution, and they help us take quick decisions with very little effort. But they also have a dark side. There are more than 150, and today we only have a look at 10 of the most important for us. And they have been very helpful for me in my profession and in the work. And I would like that my expectation is that after my talk today, you'll start seeing cognitive biases everywhere, and you start applying some of the mitigation techniques that I will show you. Actually, Edu already introduced two of the most important ones. But let's first start with an example of how biases can. I think that I'm going to start. Okay, yeah, because I don't know if I'm talking too high or too low. I have no idea. Okay. Probably most of you will have used or referenced this model at some point in time. It's the Tuckman model for groups and team evolution over time. I don't know if any of you ever wondered where this model is coming from. This model is coming from the analysis that this guy did in 1965 of psychoanalytical studies of therapy groups. Psychoanalytical studies of therapy groups. And we are using it. It's actually vastly used, and it's maybe the group development model that is most used everywhere. And it's trained, and coaches and consultants and human resources and managers use it everywhere. It is vastly used, I think, because it's simple. It matches our expectations of how things develop in a linear and causal way, but it has a problem. It doesn't hold from a scientific point of view. I was a true believer in this model 2 years ago, when I started working in my team performance model, and actually group development over time was a key part of this framework they was developing. And I did a lot of study. I checked a lot of and studied a lot of books, articles, and references about group development over time. Yeah, well, the quality of the image is not very good because of the projector. But as you can see, there are many, many models of development. Tuckman is this one. The thing with this group development is that there is no consensus within the scientific community and the research community. Actually, we don't have a clue, the summary, how teams develop over time. We don't have a clue. And we are referencing a model that was developed in 1965 based on the analysis of therapy groups, and we're consistently applying it in our workplaces. There is no consensus in the scientific community. There are lots of criticism with regards to the type of studies and research that has been done. And also, I would say last but not least, in 1988, this woman, Gerard, did a study of real teams in real organizations, and her conclusions was that actually we're not supporting the phased development of teams over time. So my conclusion for myself and for my framework is that I would never, ever use a team model for group development over time in my job, because I think there is no clarity at all. But what's going on here? We are seeing one of a bias of how a huge professional community over the world, highly qualified professionals, referencing something and using something that it's not true, it's not working. There is no scientific evidence that this works. Actually, there is scientific evidence of the opposite. But we are using it because it confirms our beliefs. It confirms our beliefs, our expectations, and our causal and linear minds. I would like you to give a warm welcome to confirmation bias. I want to believe. If you want to believe, you will find confirming evidence everywhere that your beliefs are true. And Tuckman model is one of those. And actually, Edu was talking about this. We are, human beings are believers. Confirmation bias, I think this is one of the strongest bias that you can find everywhere. And it's actually very dangerous when you work in companies, when you're trying to help people and help companies change or improve. We are also suffering of this. Now, let's dive deeper into the concept of cognitive bias. Cognitive bias are a result of evolution. These are these automatisms that help us make decisions, quick decisions, very efficiently, and most of the time, very good for us, let's say. We cannot make every decision fresh every time. It's impossible. We have certain amount of energy in our brains, and our brain has evolved to be an automation machine. When you learn to drive, you are very concentrated in driving, but after 2 years, you can listen to radio, smoke, have a conversation, and everything at the same time because our brain is automating a lot of stuff. The thing with automating is that automation goes at an unconscious level. And what happens is that we take decisions very quickly, but forgetting that other things are happening. Okay? We are blind to many information around us. Our brain has evolved in the last, maybe evolved for many thousands of years, but at some point in time, the brain that we had 100,000 years ago is the same brain that we have now. And the situation, the metaphor is this, is a computer. The metaphor is this, for you to remember. The brain that we have now is the brain that we had 100,000 years ago, but the complexity of the environment has changed so much. And the type of decisions that we have to take now are much more complicated than the type of decisions that we had to take 100,000 years ago. It was, I want to stay in my cave or I want to hunt a mammoth. But those were the type of decisions. Now, it's which project is more important, what person should I hire, what is the next improvement that I want to do. Those type of decisions are very complicated ones. So, in this hyper-connected world that we're living now, where poor decisions can multiply like in a chain reaction, breaking free of bias has never been more important. And there's also one key thing here, is that biases accumulate on top of each other. So they don't happen in isolation. So you have one bias and then it's multiplied by the effect of other bias that we will see. A key aspect is that also Ed was saying before, is that if you have a brain, you are biased. Everyone is biased, and everyone is biased a lot all the time. Okay? This is actually not a bias. If you take a picture of this, don't remember it as a bias, but the analogy works very well. Bias are like optical illusions. Even if you know that these lines are the same length, you still see this line a little shorter. And that's what happens with bias. You know that you are biased, but you cannot help not being biased. Okay? So, first of all is acceptance, that we are biased. We are biased because it's good as a result of an evolution, but the context have changed. The key thing that we need to do is actually take bias out of the process, because we cannot take bias out of the person, and I'm going to explain now. Mitigation techniques for biases are focused on understanding the situation, the context that we're going to work with, and try to detect which are the most important bias that can happen at any time, and literally take out the bias of that process, designing processes and strategies that will prevent bias from happening. But we cannot be not biased, remember. So more experience, more awareness of bias, more experience or more training won't help eliminate bias. What we need to do is create strategies, processes, use tools, techniques to actually remove the probability of bias happening. Wow. Okay. One of the reasons of biases is the existence in our brain of two ways of functioning, two different systems that Daniel Kahneman identified in his book, Thinking Fast and Slow. These two ways of functioning are, Daniel called them System 1 and System 2. System 1 is the automation machine. It's effortless, quick, fast, efficient, and help us take decisions very quickly, thousands of decisions every day with a very little cognitive effort. System 2 is actually, System 2 is who we think we are. Is the consciousness, the effort. It's very, takes a lot of energy to engage System 2. And System 2 actually thinks that it's controlling System 1, but that's not true. Actually, most of the decisions we take every day are determined by System 1. Okay? System 1 is intuition and perception. And System 2 could say it's the self, it's the government. What happens with System 1 is that when it takes decisions, it is very good at taking decisions with all the information it has, but it happens something very important. It doesn't tell you anything about the information it doesn't have. Not at all. It's very quick with the information it has, but not with the information it doesn't have, and those are why most of the biases are important. Let's have a look at an example. What do you think of Ben and Alan? Who do you think is your best next team member? Yeah, because you had time. Yeah. Well, if you are like most humans, you will probably have the tendency that we have is to when we get into a situation or we meet someone, we quickly analyze the first characteristics that we see of a person or the situation, and we actually forget, disregard, avoid the rest of the information that we get. And we are very quick at forming first opinions. But first opinions are coming by chance, because when you meet someone, you don't determine how the characteristics of this person appear to you. They just come by randomly. And this happens a lot, and this is called the halo effect. Okay? So the weight of first characteristics that we meet of a person are the most important, and we just forget and disregard about anything else. This is when we meet someone, when we get into an organization, when we arrive, we must be very careful of this. Not to remember ourselves that there is something else happening. Because someone smiles at you the first time you meet them, or because someone doesn't smile to you the first time you meet them, doesn't mean anything, actually. Maybe he's had a bad day, or maybe he's won the lottery, but you don't know anything else about that person. So don't make further assumptions and try to get more information. False consensus effect, Edu was mentioning, also very dangerous. I would like to give you a hint. Wherever you hear the word normal, false consensus effect at play. One of the things that we learn as coaches is that normality does not exist. Normality is a human creation. I think that there are as much as common senses in the world as 6,000 million common senses, right? So be aware of it. This is false consensus effect is thinking and believing that our perception of the world is accurate and that everyone else thinks the way we do. This can be really, really, really harmful in organizations. I think I need to go faster. In-group and out-group bias is believing that our group has a lot of positive attributes and that other groups don't have, or they have a lot of negative attributes. And this is related to stereotyping. And it's not only a perception, it's also a behavior. When we behave toward other groups, we already put into play a lot of stereotypes and prejudices. And this is an evolution, right? Your tribe is better than the other tribes, but maybe nowadays it's not like that. And negativity bias, a strong one. Negativity bias, as together with confirmation, is maybe one of the most important ones. Our brain has specifically evolved to detect negative information, to process negative information, and to remember negative information much better than positive ones. So you will stay alive if you remember better that the snake will kill you than that the bunny is cute. You don't care about the landscape of the bunny, but you care about the snake who is going to kill you. Negative is stronger than good, much more, in our memories, in our processing of information. Actually, studies say that to be in balance, you need an average of 3 positive experiences for each negative experience. So be aware of negative bias too. Mitigation strategies. Remember, we cannot take bias out of the person, we need to take bias out of the processes and design strategies specific for this. Engage system 2. Professional coaches are constantly engaged in system 2 when working with teams and when persons, and it's very tiresome. When you do a personal coaching session or we do a team coaching session, you finalize the session and you just don't want to talk or do anything because you are so tired. It's because you have been 1 hour or 2 hours constantly in system 2. And system 2 consumes a lot of resources and it's very tiring. Instead, system 1 is fast and quick. And also mitigation strategies, powerful strategies and tools and techniques that we use also in professional coaching is to help people take perspective from their decision. Move in space or in time, or even in personality. What would this person do in your situation? Imagine that the decision has already been taken. What would be different? This type of tools we use and help mitigate many biases. Another key mitigation strategy is use data. It may sound obvious, even in the era of big data, still many decisions are taken in organizations without considering data at all. Just wishful thinking. And when we use our wishful thinking for taking decisions, maybe that's not the best in complex world that we live in. Let's talk a little bit about coaching. Agile coaches and Scrum Masters are biased as everyone else. But I think we have a responsibility with people. We need to be aware of it because sometimes we can do more harm than good. So be aware of biases and the impact that it can have in our work. I will start with a story about the evil PO. Once I engage a team as a Scrum Master, and the first thing I do when I engage a team is ask, okay, what are the challenges that the team is facing and what are my objectives with this team? And basically most of the stakeholders and managers said the same thing. This team is going through a low motivation phase and the PO is being bossy. Okay, let's see. The PO is being bossy. The first day I joined the daily Scrum and there was this weird situation where the PO is just in front of the board and asking people. It was a reporting meeting rather than a daily Scrum. I had a conversation with her and I asked her that I would do a change in the process next day, and I would ask everyone to go in front of the board and just do the typical thing that we do in Scrum, the daily Scrum. So they did it, and this made a difference. Actually, she thanked me and she told me that she didn't want to do that. The thing that was happening here is not that the PO was being bossy, is that the PO was doing the best she could, but people was pointing to her and telling that she was being bossy. She was a victim of the circumstances, but she actually didn't want to act like that. This is what we call the fundamental attribution error, is attributing mistakes and errors to the context and or things that we do good to ourselves, but with other people is attributing problems and errors to their personality and attributing their success to their circumstances. This is extremely harmful. And what I do when I get engaged with a company or a customer is first avoid gossip. When you are part of a gossip conversation, you are already biased. It's avoid that as much as possible. I mean, I don't know how to say it. Also, look for this confirming evidence. What else can be happening here? Okay? There is a tendency in our community, and many communities, is trying to fix people. We are agile coaches. We shouldn't be fixing anyone or anything. Okay? We work with the system. We work with the team, and try to avoid individual engaging team members as much as possible. And if you see that there's a team member that may have a situation, ask a fellow coach or send him to her manager, let's say, but you don't engage with them. And again, work with the system. Okay? Confirmation bias. Again, I want to believe. I don't go through this again because I have little time and it's already mentioned. How do we mitigate confirmation bias? Engage the devil's advocate. Bring someone and hey, you're going to play the devil's advocate with me and see what the conversation goes. Also, look for this confirming evidence. Engage someone with a fresh perspective or do pair coaching. Pair coaching is a very powerful tool. And this is not a mitigation strategy, but a mitigation mindset. Is remember that you don't know. You don't know anything. You're just here to support the team, and you don't take decisions. You don't make assumptions. You don't diagnose anything. You just act as a mirror and supporting the team and the organization. Availability bias. I think we'll have to call National Geographic and Discovery Channel and make more programs about how cows kill people rather than sharks. This has to do with availability bias, where what comes into memory more quickly, we think that is more true or more relevant, and that's false, and that happens everywhere in organizations. How we should avoid this? First, remember that what's covered in the news is not what happens in the world, right? And the same happens in organizations. When you arrive at an organization, listen and look using what we call the coach gaze. Listen not what is said, but how it is said. Look for artifacts. Look at the culture. Look at what is said, not at what is said, but at what is not said. Taboos. Open your eyes and your ears if that's possible, and try to get as much information as possible. But just don't rely on what people tell you, on what you see as is most evident. Also look for this confirming evidence. This is not very clear, but this should be a pattern. Look for patterns rather than individual events. 5 minutos. And also, humbleness. Humbleness is key to coaching, not to consultancy. Consultants are not humble at all, especially, well, I won't say any name. But yes, as a coach, yes, you need to be humble. You need to recognize that you don't know and that you don't have the solutions. The solutions belong to the team and the organization. Okay? Negativity bias. 3 positive by 1 negative. This also, how we mitigate negativity bias is, we have many tools that we use in coaching, is that trying to put people in the solution space and not in the problem space. The problem space is very limited. So you want to stop smoking, you want to give up smoking, you only have one solution, give up smoking. But what happens if I ask you, okay, you want to give up smoking, you don't want to smoke, what else do you want? Maybe someone will say, okay, I want to be healthy. If you start thinking about wanting to be healthy, your perspective is bigger and you have more options. Maybe you say, okay, I want to run a marathon in 1 year. And you suddenly stop thinking about smoking. You want to run a marathon in 1 year, then you start to train. But if you start training, you cannot keep up smoking. Maybe you smoke a little bit, but then you will see that it has a negative effect in your timings and in your training. So it's a different approach. It's putting people, helping people be in the positive space, in the solution space. That works really well with teams. And we have tools such as appreciative inquiry or solution focus that are in the solution space. Let's talk about a little bit about retrospective quickly. I know there's some people going to do chats about retrospective today and tomorrow. I've been doing retrospective for a while, and at some point in time I came to believe that the way retrospective are done are not very effective, and that that actually is not the best use that we can do of people's time. The main reason being is that retrospective are perhaps one of the most biased events that you can find in an organization. When people gather information from memory is when we are most biased. Okay? And retrospective, most of them are basically asking people to gather information from memory. So we have typical exercises, the boat, the timeline, Matsaglat, or the radar. My recommendation is that you stop doing these things. Stop, because you are just biased. It's pure bias. Right? My recommendation, again, is that you can go to the bar and have a good time with your team. What I would do is, these are the typical stages that you can have in a retrospective. After knowing about biases, after experiencing with it, my look at these 5 stages is different now. First stage is influence. Second stage is gather opinions and judgments. And third stage is generate assumptions. And once you have all these, what you do afterwards is meaningless and probably harmful. So biases is impacted by confirmation biases, as we see. So when someone in a team already thinks that something happened, they're going to gather information from the memory that confirms that thing happened and nothing else. Can you take a few seconds reading these names, please? Are there more women names or men names? Women? 10 women versus 14 men. What happens here is called representativeness heuristic, and it's very dangerous for retrospective. When you think that something is more likely, it's not because it's more likely, it's because it's more representative in your mind. So you think that something happens more frequently, it's not happening more frequently. It's because women were known actors, actresses, or writers, but men, who knows. And this is a tool that we consistently use in retrospective. Okay? So availability bias also. I will call Discovery Channel and ask them to do a program on coconuts killing people. Actually, there's lots of things that kill more people than sharks. I love sharks, and I hate when all these, they are always in news. Spiders, snakes, falling from the shower, everything kills more people than sharks. But we consistently think that sharks kill a lot of people. And this is extremely powerful one that happens in retrospective too. When we ask people to remember past events and emotional past events, we are not capable of remembering anything else than the last emotional state or the peak emotional state. We are not capable of remembering the average emotional state. So when you do this typical exercise about the car brand or the film title, tell me that the film title or the car brand that best represents your experience in the last retrospective. People will give a name of a film that represents their last state or the average or the most important state, but not the average. Negativity bias we have seen. What should we do? Separate process improvement from team development. Process improvement, use data, use experiments. And don't do retrospective for team development of any kind. You do retrospective for process improvement. Inspect and adapt. And on the other hand, in parallel, you can help a team develop. Help a team develop by setting the basics right. Team's purpose, vision, objective, working agreements. Actually, setting the basics right is going to help eliminate a lot of biases for teams. False consensus effect, group thing, group pressure. I don't have time. Data-driven continuous improvement, many of the lean concepts, retrospect in real time, Toyota Kata, Kaizen events. A typical situation of retrospective too. Let's do these actions, and I'm guilty of this. Let's do these actions and see what happens. Well, if you plan to see what happens, something is guaranteed. You will see what happens because something is guaranteed to happen. So, do proper experiments. Align with team objective. Declare your expected outcomes upfront. Emphasize accuracy, not precision. Turn assumptions into falsifiable hypotheses. Time box. Use control group and one experiment at a time. And I'm done. I didn't have. I have to run to the last stage. Just I have 30 seconds. 10 seconds. 10 seconds for questions. Okay. I have 10 minutes for questions. Questions can be in Spanish or Catalan or English, and I don't speak any other language. Well, basically, my approach with teams is always, as I said, a system approach. Okay. So, first of all, there are many tendencies in team coaching. I'm one of those that believe that first of all you need to set the basics right, as I was saying. So set the basics right is when you plant a seed, you don't plant it in the ground floor or whatever. No, you just select the best soil. You put whatever ingredients you need there. You find a nice I don't know the name of this nice container. And you put it with the sun. So what are the basic conditions of a team? A team must have a purpose, a clear direction. Team must have working agreements. So those are the constitution of a team. Team must talk about their values, what makes everyone different in a team. Objectives, KPIs, what are we here for? Our mission, vision, all these things set the ground floor of the team. And then you support them when needed. So this is where we are going. Okay. Then you are just there by their side, helping them with the specific interventions. You don't need to be there every day. Okay? But the key thing here is to separate the process from the team. And don't mix process improvement with team improvement, because in the end people don't know what they are doing. And there can be a lot of improvement by focusing on the process too. Not at this point in time. He was asking if I. Okay. Sí, hazlo en español, sí.
Que si alguna vez ha visto en algún equipo o relaciones entre equipos que está ocurriendo que están siendo influidos y ha hecho una dinámica para demostrarles que están siendo influidos y las decisiones no son las más correctas.
No, para ponerlo delante de ellos como evidencia de que están siendo. No. Eso aún no lo he hecho. No sé si lo haré alguna vez, pero no. La mayoría de técnicas que utilizamos a nivel de coaching de equipos o personal ya trabajan con esto. No sé si conscientemente o inconscientemente, pero ya, de hecho, poner a la gente en el espacio de solución ya elimina muchos de los biases. O sea, hay situaciones en las que estás en el equipo, es que no podemos hacer nada, estamos súper bloqueados, no sé. Y yo pienso, ¿estáis seguros? Y entonces trabajas con ellos, ¿no? Imaginaos que esto dentro de un año habéis conseguido vuestro objetivo, ¿no? Y ahora estáis aquí. Pensad en lo que realmente está funcionando, ¿no? Y entonces empiezas a tirar de las fortalezas, de lo que realmente está funcionando. Y entonces les haces ver seguro que no hay nada que esté funcionando y de aquí no podéis coger algo y tirar un pasito para adelante. Esa gente se mete en el problema y estas técnicas ayudan a sacar. Esto no conscientemente les hablo del negativity bias o del confirmation bias, pero sí que utilizas técnicas para sacar a la gente de la mentalidad de la víctima, de la negatividad.
¿Qué fuente de información recomiendas para pensamiento sistémico? ¿Algún libro?
Hombre, a nivel depende, ¿eh? A nivel de organización, las 5 disciplinas de Senge y el de Thinking in Systems de Donella Meadows. Eso es bueno, el de Fifth Discipline igual, y luego el Field Book de Fifth Discipline, que te da muchísimas herramientas para aplicar la teoría del libro inicial. Y a nivel de coaching, pues ya entraríamos en un debate un poco más largo, de coaching sistémico y de muchas variedades. Pero a mí el trabajo de Alain Cardón, por ejemplo, me gusta mucho.